All right, so hey guys, this is Coach Mac, Play Fast Football. This is the first episode of what I am going to call Mac Talk, which is kind of a maybe a parody on Smack Talk or Talking Smack. This is just me and another football coach from across the country talking about everything from football to life to what we like to things we enjoy. And I thought there would be no better first guest than my man, Coach Shiffman, who we met each other back in the day when we were both doing quote unquote chats on Twitter. And I don't know if I really knew what a chat was back then, but a bunch of us got into a group message and said, hey guys, how can we help each other out? How can we make this better? And from that point on, we've been coaching friends, Twitter friends, and guys that reach out to one another when we need some help. So Coach Shiffman, congratulations. You are the first guest on Mac Talk.
I'm honored. I'm very honored. You had a lot of guys throwing their names out there. So I was the lucky one you picked. So I'm super excited to get to talk to you.
Yeah, there were a lot of hats in the ring. There were a lot of people that kind of tossed their name up, but when it came down to the draft and you threw your name in the ring, it was kind of really simple for me. I think we have very similar backgrounds from the standpoint of doing Twitter chats and trying to figure out where those are going to go. The interesting thing for me, Coach, is I didn't start the Florida high school football chat. Somebody else started it. And then when they realized what was involved and what they could and couldn't do, they reached out to me and said, hey, Coach, I've got this thing going on. Do you think you could run it? And at that time, I was so naive and so dumb that I said, yeah, I think I can run it. You just ask questions on Twitter. What's the big deal? And,
right.
A couple of years later, here we are. And I've been able to meet a lot of great people on Twitter through the chats and some other things. So we'll get into a lot of those things on the episode. But, just to start off, Coach, just give us a background of yourself, how you got into coaching, how you grew up in football, why it's important to you, and why you do the things you do.
Yeah. This will be my 16th year coaching. Got into it a little bit late in life. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Knew that I loved the game of football. Knew that I wanted to do something with football. And basically, one of my mentors grabbed me and said, "You should be doing this." And I listened, and so I started coaching, and sort of have been all over the place, all over the country doing it. All different levels. All types of schools, and it's such an important game to me. Not just coaching, but just football in general was such an important game to me growing up. It was my football story. While I feel like it's unique to myself, I'm sure it's not unique to everybody. I'm sure there's other people that kind of can say that was their story, but I didn't start playing. Or I shouldn't say didn't, but I originally didn't want to play football. My mother made me play football. When I was growing up, I'm from Springfield, Illinois. Back in the day, they started football when you were sixth grade. So it was JFL, Junior Football League. There were 4 teams: the Southwest Bears, the Southeast Packers, the Northeast Cowboys, and the Northwest 49ers. And it was all districted, kind of in the state, how they all set up. And so going into 6th grade, my father asked me if I wanted to play. Didn't really want to play. And my mom basically said, well, tough, you're playing football. And so she signed me up, and I kind of survived the first year. And then 7th grade, she kind of again said, do you want to play? And I said, I'm not too sure. And we talked about it, and I went back out my 7th grade year and started to have a little bit of success. And then 8th grade, 7th grade, I got hooked. And then 8th grade, I was the one who wanted to play. And so, I owe a lot to her. She got me started. And so, it's funny not to backtrack too much, but I remember the 2020 fall with COVID. That was the first fall since I was 11 that I didn't have anything to do with football, whether it was playing or coaching or doing something. Because I played. I don't tell a lot of people this. Not that it's bad, but I just don't talk about it a lot. But when I graduated college, I played 13 years of semi-pro football. So even those first couple of years when I was done with college, I was still playing football in the fall and spring. So that was the first year since I had been 10 years old that I didn't have football. So it was very, very odd to me, very strange to me that time, as for everybody else. But yeah, so long-winded answer for a short question. So it's just been a huge part of my life, still is. If there's one thing I want to do, it's for a profession, it's coach football, and I hope I can do it as long as I'm allowed to. So
it's funny that you mentioned that it's either something that you don't want to bring up or something that you don't talk about, but 13 years of semi-pro to me means you are somebody that needs football and you are going to play until they told you no. I don't think, knowing you personally, and knowing a little bit about you, I don't think 13 years of semi-pro was you chasing the NFL dream. I don't think it was you playing an extra year, hoping that somebody finds you with the Illinois Fighting Bomber Cats in the semi-pro league of, it's just a guy that loves football and wants to play. And at that point in your life, you had a chance to probably hold a job and play semi-pro football and earn a living while playing semi-pro football. And, I think for some people, what they don't understand is, for a lot of us that aren't talented enough or gifted enough to play at the highest level, we want to play until somebody says no. We want to play until the hourglass or the good Lord or somebody says, look, your time's up, you're done. And for a lot of us, probably 95% of the world or more than that, it's usually after high school or after college. You have nothing left. You're not an NFL guy. You're not a pro player, and hang your cleats up, you're done. So, I kind of admire the fact that you are willing to go out and do that for so many years, because not only is it physically take a toll on your body, but it's just a mental grind while you're still holding a job and doing some other things. And it's just the passion and the focus, which, totally gets people to understand why you do what you do when you play the game for that long at the semi-pro level, not trying to find an agent and chase a dream. You just play because you wanted to play.
Yeah. And that's 100% how it started. I got done. I got done with college, and one of my buddies from college had tried out there they had originally started as an arena team. They were going to try to do sort of lower level arena football. And he tried out and made the team, and basically him and I we were working out together still at school, because we were both still enrolled in college, and found out they were having tryouts. And I remember going to the tryouts and talking to some of my other buddies and trying to convince them to come out. And it was just, again, anybody who's ever seen me or met me in person knows that I'm not I'm about 5'10". I was at that time probably 190 pounds, about the same size as I am now. And I played offensive line in college. So I remember showing up and not really knowing what I was going to do, trying to, in my mind, I didn't want to be an offensive lineman. I wanted to try to be a skill position guy, just because that's what all offensive linemen do. And so, I remember showing up and it was, I still get made fun of to this day, because, and this is not, I'm not trying to gloat or toot my own horn, but I've always been a guy in weightlifting. And so I probably, when I showed up to that first tryout, I don't know, maybe 80 to 85 guys there, I was probably one of the 10 most athletic guys that showed up. And I'm not a very athletic person. I'm not super fast. I'm not very flexible. I'm not, I don't move side to side very well, but I was probably one of the most athletic people there. So I impressed some of the coaches. Well, we start going through practice or start going through the tryout, and they start, and I'm thinking, like, what am I going to, like, what position am I going to play? What am I going to do? And they were starting to have guys throw, and I could always throw a football. So I actually played quarterback like the first 2 weeks of my semi-pro career. And before I very, 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 very quickly realized I should not be doing this. And I remember going to the coach and saying, Coach, let me play fullback. I can play fullback. I can run a little bit. I know I can block. I played offensive line in high school and college. Let me play fullback. So I sort of was a multi-purpose guy. I remember taking snaps at fullback and tailback and tight end and even wide receiver the first couple of weeks of practice. And I remember I played fullback. I got some carries. I scored my first ever touchdown. I was on all the special teams. And then we went into a game and this is sort of one of my friends who I played semi-pro football with, who is he's a two-time Hall of Famer in semi-pro football. He's in 2 different Hall of Fames. But he always jokes with me. He said he tells me this was what made me in semi-pro football. We had to play a game in Lafayette, Indiana against the Lafayette Lions. And our starting center, who was about 6'3", 350, was going to be gone. And I told the coach, I was like, Coach, I played center in college. Like, I played 4 years of college football. I played offensive line. I can play center. And the guy I had to go against and block was a guy who used to play football at Purdue. He was a backup at Purdue, but still played Big Ten football. And
that's pretty good.
What was that?
That's pretty good if you played at Purdue.
Yeah. And so I had a pretty good game against him. I by no means kicked his butt or dominated him, but I did my job, and he didn't have a lot of, he didn't make a lot of plays, and we ended up winning. And that was sort of that, it was eye-opening to a lot of guys, because semi-pro football, what I learned going around early in those first couple of seasons was because we transitioned from 11-man to 8-man football. So what I learned in the 11-man game was bigger was always better to everybody in semi-pro football. I was coming from a D3 football where I often saw 5'8" to 5'11" offensive linemen who were, 225 to 260 pounds, and they weren't very big, but they could move and they could play. And, I'm looking at these semi-pro guys who are all 6'5", 360 and just big, giant human beings. And I'm sitting there, me, a little guy. I mean, even that season, I was the center. The 2 guards were both one was 6'4", 350. One was 6'5", 285, 300 pounds. And one tackle was 6'6", 320, and the other tackle was 6'3", about 250. So, we got these giant, massive people, and I'm sitting there, little short man in the middle. And so it was such a good experience. But yeah, I don't talk about it a lot, just because for me, coaching high school football, I never found it relevant. My football experiences in semi-pro didn't translate to the high school guys.
Yeah. And
I was never a guy that, and I'm not going to talk about it just for the sake of talking about it for clout or anything like that. So it just never was relevant to me. It was not, it wasn't the things that I did. I would try to explain, I would try to talk about some of the technique and stuff that I used, but I would still, even then I would still talk about the things I did at the college level more so than the semi-pro level. It just never seemed relevant to me to try to compare, a 14 to 18-year-old kid playing high school football to me, who's playing football against grown men in their 30s on the weekends. It just didn't seem like they connected. And so I just never really talked about it with those guys.
I think that, to me, though, right away, the thing that I see, first and foremost, and this is something as a head high school coach I've talked about all the time, is it's not the experiences per se in semi-pro. It's the fact that you played because you needed to play. A lot of people, you talked about your mom got you to play, early on before you really thought you wanted to play. And then eventually you decided that you wanted to play. But I've always explained to high school kids, and the relevancy in that story to me is you play because you need to play, not because you want to play. Those that want to play probably won't have a lot of success. Those that need to play, those that need football in their life, those that need those experiences are probably going to be the ones that can take it as far as they can take it. The ones that want to play because they want a jersey, they want to be part of the experience, those kids are going to have a hard time making it. The want to and the need to. Yeah. And I've always explained this to, the high school players I've had, that, as a D3 1AA non-scholarship football player, I didn't get paid to play football. I didn't get a scholarship to play football. I continued on in college because I needed to play football. I needed football in my life. I needed the structure. I needed everything about it. But I needed to play until someone said you can't. So to me, that's when you are talking about being a high school coach, or I know recently you were a small college football coach, and I have all the respect in the world for you guys, because I played small college football and then I was a small college GA. But to me, that's the relevancy in the story. It's not talking about, oh, I played semi-pro for 13
Right.
years. It's talking about the fact that experience was because you needed to play football.
Yeah. And I more so than needed to play football, I think part of me still too, and I got it in coaching as well, but I needed the camaraderie of football.
Yeah.
Like I wanted my, like the some of the best stories I've got from playing semi-pro football aren't the games, they're after the games, hanging out with guys. And I mean, that's, some of my closest friends are still, are guys that I played semi-pro football with that I still talk to. And that was part of what I needed too, was just that, because I didn't have my senior year of college was not the greatest of experiences. And so I was bitter and angry, and I needed something to sort of wash that taste out of my mouth. And semi-pro football, playing those first couple of years, really helped with that. And then even kind of playing late, it's funny. It's funny, because I sit there and think about it. I think my last year I played, I was 30, 33 or 34. And even those last, it sort of was, I was the old person. I was the older guy playing. And you look at it and you're like, oh, 33. It's like, well, Andrew Whitworth was just playing in the Super Bowl at 40. So it's kind of funny, but I mean, shoot, I remember playing against guys in their late 30s, 40s, when I was in my 20s. So it was, again, it was just something, like you said, I was not ready to be done with the game. And these guys were telling me that I could still line up and do all those things that I loved, and still get to be a part of a team and still get to hang out with buddies. And now I could, now I'm an adult, I can go out and not have to worry about going to class on Monday or doing anything like that. So it was just, it was a great experience overall, but a different experience than what kids that you and I are coaching are going through.
But it's hard to, unless you've done it before or you've been through it before, it's hard to explain to people how to translate the experience and how to get the experience. Like you think that, okay, you graduate and you go into the workforce and you start working with people, and that's your community, that's your team, that's, all the other metaphors you want to use. But
right.
It's hard to explain to people what it's like playing a football game with people against 11 other people or 60 other people, however you want to look at it. It's hard to explain to people what that feels like and how hard it is to get that experience in any other setting in your life.
Yeah.
And so, the ultimate, probably, ultimate team sport, the penultimate team experience, a lot of football guys and football coaches talk about the experience and how you're teaching kids to be a part of society and a part of a community and a part of a workplace and everything else. But there's not many other avenues in society or a workplace that mimic what a football team, locker room, game environment is like. So, it's hard to find that anywhere else.
It really is. I mean, and it's, I mean, you and I are, we're coaches, we've used the cliches a bunch, but it's, if football, if one person doesn't do their job out of the 11, the whole play can blow up, and you don't get that. You could have, in other sports, and like you said, in other settings, you look at basketball, one person can take over. You look at, other sports like that, but it translates to the real world so much, and teaches you how to be a team player. I mean, and we try to teach these kids, sometimes, and you've coached long enough, sometimes the kids don't get it until they're out of it and they start to realize that, hey, it is a team game. But there's just so many lessons to be learned in the game that people sort of take for granted. And it's, I know I try to teach as much as I can without being corny and cliche about it, being, part of the team and all that stuff. But it's just, I don't know. It is what it is. It's just, it's such a great sport that people, I think, are starting to appreciate more. But it's just, there's just so much. so many positives with the game that you want to be able to focus on, and it's just awesome in my opinion.
Yeah. So let's transition from that, Coach. Let's get into this Twitter sphere a little bit.
Yeah.
Where does Hog Football Chat come from? Where does it start? How does it start? What was the origin of it? Where I know it was you and another guy doing it originally. Yep. What was the first, the backdrop, the story, the how did it come about? Where did you guys decide that this was something you wanted to do?
So I'm not sure when you're going to post this or air this, but it's the 13th of March, and actually last Monday was our 7-year anniversary of the Hog Football Chat. So it's been going on for 7 years. It never, I don't know. We started it originally as just another, again, Twitter was, 7 years ago, 2015, Twitter was there. It wasn't a huge platform. I mean, it was starting to become a big platform, but I don't think it had scratched the surface of sort of what it is now. But it was out there. There were some people, Chris Fisher, who I, lovingly referred to as the Godfather. He had started the Texas High School Football Chat. And again, it was, if you go back to those days, and he kind of made a joke about it last week about how he wishes he could, but it was, couple coaches, 20, 30 coaches kind of getting on and talking about stuff. And I remember following along one night and sending him a message. And I didn't know jack squat about Twitter. I was not very active on Twitter. Sending him a message just saying, hey, I live in North Carolina. I'm from Illinois. Can I still participate in the Texas High School Football Chat? And he was like, absolutely, come on in. And so started doing that in January of 2015. And then Jack Dingus and I, we started speaking about some things. We started sending, we had some conversations through the Texas High School Football Chat, and we both said, hey, what if we did an offensive line one? And so that's sort of the early stages of it. And we'd started it again, like I said, and it was, I think the actual date was the 6th of March 2015 was our first one. And we probably had that first night, I think I've told this story before, and I'm getting old and my brain's not what it used to be, but it was either 17 or 27 coaches came on the first night. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Look, this is awesome. We got all these guys.
We've made it.
Right. We got all these guys in conversation and blah, blah, blah. And we had a couple stumbles along the way. I remember we changed nights a couple times because it had started out as like a Friday night thing. And then I think we went to Thursday and then finally settled on Monday night. After a while, we had at first we were going to do offensive line and defensive line. And I remember we did a defensive line one very early, and there were like 4 coaches. And I was like, we're never doing defense again. I remember telling Dingus that. I was like, we are never doing defense again. He was like, nope, I agree 100%. So, it was sort of that, just those early stages of kind of feeling things out. And I can still remember the first night, Kevin Mawai hopped on, and I was like, holy shit. Like there's an NFL guy that's pretty big. Communicating. And that's sort of how it took off. It's something that you talked about the Florida High School Football Chat, how you took it over. There's some days I wish I could give it off to some other people, a younger generation or a different generation, but I don't want to see it dwindle, I guess. And it might not be the right word to use, but I just don't want to see it suffer. And so it's just something that I've invested a huge amount of time in now. It's something that I'm really proud of. It's probably, I don't know if it's as big as it was a few years ago, but it's something I'm still really proud of. And we've, not shameless plug, we've got our 4th clinic coming up in April. And so that's something that I'm super proud of. And it's just, it's sort of taken on a world of its own. And it's, people, that's how people know me. You know, you and I had talked a little bit off before we started recording about kind of Twitter followers and things like that. And, you know, that's how people know me. I mean, that's people see me and they see my profile picture and they know that's the guy from the Hog Football Chat, or, you know, that's how I get introduced. And so it's something that's again, really proud of, and something that's been a fun 7 years. And I don't know, at some point I would have to imagine it will stop. You know, either Twitter is going to stop or I'll give it up or something, but until then, it's just something that we're going to have fun with. And I get to communicate with hundreds of coaches on Monday night. And it's just been a great thing for, not just for me, but I know a lot of guys. And that's something that's also something I'm really proud of, is just all the people who really follow along and value it and get something out of it. You know, whether it's building a relationship or building a friendship with somebody, or just purely football. It's just something that I'm really proud of and think is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, like you said, you know, you get introduced as the Hog Football Chat guy, and you know, whether it's social media or a lot of times if I'm at clinics, you know, I'm the play fast guy, I'm the YouTube guy, you know, I'm the, hey, aren't you that guy on YouTube? Yeah, I'm that guy on YouTube, and there's a lot of other things in my life that I've done that I'm pretty proud of. But the fact that that's how people know you is, you know, it's amazing to me, you know, when you think about it, that you can have that kind of reach, that you could, you know, I never thought when I first started, you know, coaching as a grad assistant and back in 94, 95 or 96, around then, and went to my first couple of clinics. I never thought that I would go to a clinic and somebody would recognize me. You know, I never thought that I would go to a clinic and somebody would say, hey, aren't you that guy? And so, you know, it's funny that you mentioned it, that, you know, it's a little bit weird to be known as the Hog Football Chat guy or whatever, when you're Coach Shiffman and you've done a lot of great things in your life, and you've got a personal life and you've got a story that's, you know, you've got a story that's beyond Hog Football Chat. But to go to a clinic somewhere and have somebody sit down and look over, and you get that kind of weird, you know, you get that kind of 3-look glance, and somebody goes, hey, are you by any chance Tony Shiffman from Hog Chat?
I remember, this is a funny story. I think it was 2017. I just finished up my first year at Rossview High School in Clarksville, Tennessee, 2016 or 2017. And we were at the Glacier in Nashville. And it was January as the Glacier Clinic. I'm sitting in a room listening to a guy talk about program development. And all of a sudden, one of his slides is one of my tweets from the Hog Football Chat. And it's my, cool. And I'm just sitting there, and like everybody turns and looks at me, and I was like, yep, that's me, guys. Sorry. Like, I didn't know what to do, but it was again, it was such a neat thing. You don't know. I mean, and you see the people who interact with it, but you don't know who's watching and not, lurking. You don't know who's watching.
It's so anonymous. You know, it's the weirdest thing. It's the coolest thing in the world, but it's the scariest thing in the world also, because, you know, when you're putting something out there that's a chat or a YouTube, or, you know, it's you by yourself doing it from your phone or your computer or whatever it may be, and you have no idea if anybody's watching.
Right.
You have no idea what's going on.
Right. So it was, and I remember he did that and got through it, and I went up and introduced myself after, and I'm pretty sure we're still Twitter friends to this day. But yeah, it was one of those things that was like kind of like, and I think that was already after the Mawai thing. So I knew people were seeing it, but I didn't really, again, like you said, I didn't know how far it was reaching. And so it was just a neat thing. And but like, that's the stuff that, for me, that's the stuff that we've been doing it for 7 years now. That's the stuff that it's still cool. Like, I'm 40 years old. I've met these people thousands of times before, and I'm still, every time Herb Hand comes on the chat, I still am like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, it's still, I'm just,
that's her freaking hand. That's her hand.
Right. And that's the fun part about Twitter is I get to still be a fanboy. At the end of the day, I still get to be a fanboy. And, these are people that I look up to and that are role models. And I still get to be even though they might think of me as a peer and as somebody like that, they're still, I immediately revert back to being an 18-year-old kid and like my jaw hitting the floor. And that's that. I don't think that'll ever get old. So
I had the had similar story to that. Probably maybe not as cool as that, but I went to a clinic in Atlanta, and I had a kid that had played for me that was my defensive coordinator, and this is going back, the beginning, early stages, 2014, 15, the early stages of the YouTube stuff, and
yeah.
The kid would always joke with me, and nobody watches that stuff. Nobody knows what that stuff is. And so we're sitting at a clinic in Atlanta, and a guy sits down next to me, and he gives me the kind of 3 or 4 look over, and he says, "Hey, are you the PlayFast guy?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're the guy on YouTube, right?" I said, "Yeah." And the kid that played for me is my defensive coordinator sitting next to me, and he's going, "No effing way. There's no way." And I said, "Yeah, whatever." And we start a conversation, and after that speaker, the kid's like, "There's no way. How in the world is it? Nobody watches that." And we go to the next speaker, and I sit down, and the kid's with me again, and somebody else comes up, and they look at my badge. They kind of give the name badge look, 1 or 2 times to make sure. And at that time, I didn't have PlayFast hats. I didn't have PlayFast shirts. I didn't have anything. And a guy says, "Hey, are you the guy on YouTube?" I said, "Depends on what you're talking about, but yeah, I think so." If we're talking about the same thing.
Right.
And the guy said, "Hey, I've watched some of your 4-2-5 videos." And, the kid that played for me, that was my defensive coordinator, was, not only shocked, but almost pissed, that this kind of came to fruition. And funny story, we get to the back after one of the sessions, and I go to get a drink of water, and the guy comes over, and I then turn my former player defensive coordinator, a guy asked me a question about it. And I said, "Hey, this is my defensive coordinator, Tyler Thomas. Ask him how we do things." And the next thing you know, Tyler's in a conversation with this guy for 45 minutes about how we do things in the 4-2-5. And from that moment on, he came back and he said, "This is so cool. I never thought it was," and it was
right.
Like, I didn't think it would come to this either. I didn't know that it was going to be this, but when I gave him a chance to talk about how he does things in the 4-2-5, not how I do it, not how PlayFast does it, just the fact that this guy recognized me, and then I turned the question over to my, former player, young kid that's a defensive coordinator. He now got to give his opinion, and that was like the biggest thing in the world to him, because he's still a defensive coordinator to this day at a pretty prominent high school in Jacksonville, and he's always wanted to speak at clinics. He's always wanted an opportunity, and so that was kind of the first chance, that I took my platform and I passed it over to him. Not only to say, "Hey, yes, there are people watching this, and yes, this is a thing," but I gave him a chance to then speak about his beliefs on the 4-2-5 and how we do things. And he thought that was the coolest thing in the world, because I didn't just answer the question and say, "Yeah, this is what we do, how we do it," just like the video says. I basically said, "Hey, here's my defensive coordinator. Why don't you talk to him about the things we're doing?" And he got a chance to talk to people, so
that's what's cool. But that's what's cool about it, is that like it gives these guys a voice. I mean, it gives every coach a voice. I mean, there's I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of coaches that get on the that get on the chat that on any chats that have no voice in their program, or are too young, or have their own ideas and aren't being able to do them, that get to say them and get feedback, whether positive, negative, constructive criticism, whatever it is, that get to then jot their stuff down and say, "All right, maybe I'll do this, or maybe I'll change this, or maybe I'll do it the way this guy does it." And so that to me is the best part about it, is that it's such a good learning experience, and people are able to get if they take it. And again, we talked about this off the air, the level of seriousness with Twitter, but if they take those chats as almost a learning experience and take it a little bit seriously, they can become better coaches through it and because of it. And I think that's how they all started. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to Fisher, he'll tell you that's how it all started, just trying to learn, trying to get better. And that's really at the root of it, everything that's great about those chats, and how most of them still are. I mean, it's, there just so many good positive things from any of them that people hopefully still get out of it. That yeah, it's so good for young coaches and old coaches, and just all coaches alike. It's just, I don't know, it's just a great thing for all those guys.
And it's weird now when I go on. I've been on your podcast. I've been on other podcasts before, and the thing I always talk to people about is when the game of football is so results orientated, and it's so win and loss orientated. And I look back now, when I go back, when people ask me about the start of it, how I started, what made me think about doing it. One of the things I look at is when I look back at my my resume, so to speak, of high school football and being a head coach, from a results orientated standpoint, there's absolutely no reason why I was ever going to be a voice anywhere, or I was ever going to be a mentor anywhere. If you just look at it from a resume,
yeah.
But the social media platform and the YouTube platform gave me a chance to speak about things that I believe in, things that I coach, things that I preach, and there are so many people out there that got a chance to find out, things about how you coach and what you do, that they never would have found out about it if it was based on results. Because let's face it, in every state that we're in, there's only a handful of guys that are going to be state champions. There's only a handful of guys that are going to have that kind of resume. I mean, football is still, when you look at the NFL, you look at college. I mean, right now, everybody in the NFL, everything's about free agency and the draft. Why is it about free agency and the draft? Because players win games, and it's one of those things where in high school football, you're only going to be as successful as the talent that you have at your program. Right. And the greatest thing about coaching to me is some of my best years were 3-7, 4-6.
Yeah.
The fact that we were able to go 3-7 or 4-6 with a certain roster is better than a lot of the accolades of people that went 9-1 or 10-0 with 15 Division I players. Because right. Coaching is about what you make and how you make of it. And so, to me, the chats and the YouTube and all those things, it gives people a voice to kind of get out there and do some things that, who would have thought that Hog Football chat would be seen by so many people, and you'd be doing, this is your second Zoom call today. And I know that I've done Zoom calls in Germany and Panama and Brazil. And who would have thought that as an anonymous high school guy,
yeah,
you would get a chance to do all these things and reach so many people. That's the thing to me that's so great about it is the reach that you have through a platform that nobody would have found out about if it was just Tony Shiffman coaching O-line.
Right. Well, and that's part of what I'm really proud of too, is not just the relationships I've made, but the relationships that have happened because of it too. Yeah. Coaches, I mean, coaches getting jobs, and coaches making, again, making relationships and making connections and finding these people and talking to those guys. That's the other stuff that kind of really makes me proud of it. And that's why I don't want to give it up. That's why I want to keep going as long as I can, because I know how beneficial it is to coaches all over.
Well, and it's your baby, I mean, it's something that you can't, it's something that, it's like creating your own business. It's a business venture. You go out there and you start something and you don't know where it's going to go. And then when it goes somewhere, you really don't want to give it up, because it's your creation. It's right. It's your manifestation into the world of something that you and Jack created. And, you want to take it to further heights. And at right. the same time, when there's days when you feel like, like I've got to do mine tonight at 8:00. And, there's times where you feel like, I don't, I got other things going on. I've right. got a million other things. And I know you've got a child on the way. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I've got two of my own. So I understand what all that's about. And you get to a point where it's like, I don't know if I can do this tonight. I don't know if I want to do it. But at the same time,
that's where Fisher gave me the secret, because I don't want to tell everybody my secret, but I usually plug the chat in Sunday nights on TweetDeck. And so 99% of the time, I don't even pay attention to the chat anymore. which sounds horrible. It sounds so bad. But I just, again, like you're talking about, I've got so much other stuff to do. I've got things that I've got going on that, I can take 5 to 10 minutes on a Sunday, plug everything in, and then it's like the old commercials, set it and forget it. I don't have to worry about it. And
you know what? I envy you. I envy Chris Fisher. I can't set anything 5 minutes in advance. Anybody that's watched my YouTube channel and anybody that watches this on Patreon is going to understand that I am so technologically set back, and I still have to do it manually. I still have to do it every Sunday night at 8:00.
We'll get on a Zoom and I'll teach you how to use TweetDeck, and it will be.
And I'm sure some of my sponsors would probably appreciate that too, because I'd probably do a better job with all that. Speaking of those things, Tony, what was always interesting to me as a content creator and somebody who is speaking on all aspects of the game of football, how hard is it on Monday night to come up with content every week for offensive line?
It's, in all honesty, it's if you can give me a topic, I can come up with 4 questions.
Yeah.
And so the part that, and I don't think coaches mind this part, we've obviously recycled questions before.
I actually, and I don't know how much you do this, but I have to go back and check the chat sometimes for 3 weeks, a month ago, 5 weeks ago, because I don't remember what we did. And when it comes to like, even so, tonight's chat is 3 hours away and I don't even know what the topic is. I don't know what questions I'm going to ask.
Right.
So I have to go back and look and see, because I've done offense and defense, because I've done position specific, because I've done run game, passing game, coverages, fronts. I have to go back and check what we've done the last couple of weeks to make sure that I know that at some point I've repeated myself. I know that at some point, but the great thing about it is in the social media world is, there's some people out there that are going to look at it and go, oh, I saw this question 3 months ago.
Right.
There's going to be other people that have never seen the question and respond to it for the first time.
Yeah, no, I know. And again, this is my brain for some reason. I mean, my wife she yelled at me today because she's going out to meet her friend for dinner. And I literally asked her 3 times in the last hour what time she's leaving, because I can't remember. But I can remember what we've talked about the last 6 months on the Hog Football chat. But yeah, so I'll go back and I know we've recycled things, but I'll go back through the direct messages Dingus and I have from 6 years ago and find topics. Be like, oh, that was great. Let's do this one again. And so, but again, I've spent enough time in the game and I spent enough time in the position, I think, and I don't want to sound like I'm being a blowhard, but if you can give me a topic, I can usually come up with 4 questions pretty quickly that are different enough, and then we can move on. And I mean, I'm not above messaging a guy on a Sunday night and being like, hey, give me 4 questions. I've done that before. I've asked players for 4 questions before. So I think there's enough. And again, there's enough. The issue for us, and not issue, but the tough thing for us is that it's all offensive line.
Yeah.
So we're kind of limited and hamstrung a little bit with trying to keep it in that area. But there's still enough content out there that we can, I'm sure the 4 questions we've got for tomorrow, I'm sure we've talked about in some form or another at some point, probably more than once, to be honest with you. So
yeah, but it's the great thing about it is it's first of all, offensive line play in general and football in general, it's a living document. It changes yearly, it changes daily. It's things that you talked about, you may have repeated a couple times, but the answers today aren't the same as they were. The best in the game, the best guys that we could bring out, that whether it be, Alexander, McAnally, any of those guys that you want to talk about that are what we consider to be the gurus, the Alex Gibbs of the world, they change, and their techniques change as the game changes and as physical, as bodies change and physical attributes of players changed. So, football itself is a living, breathing document, and O-line play is 100% a living, breathing document. So I don't think anybody has a problem going back and saying, "Oh, I saw this question 4 months ago or 5 months ago." Yeah, well, it's probably got a different spin on it now.
Right. And again, we've been doing it for 7 years. I've never had somebody message me or say that we just had that question, or we had that question April 12th, 2018. Like that's never happened. Knock on wood, it never does. But so there's always going to be some content. There's always going to be something that we can find and we can figure out questions for. And again, like you just said, it's going to change. I guarantee you, if I went back and did a deep enough dive and looked at the questions that we asked more than once, I bet the people that respond, there's going to be coaches that respond that change their answers every time.
Yeah.
If I ask the same question in 2017 that we're asking tomorrow, I bet there's going to be coaches that give, the answers they gave in 2017 are going to be different because like you just said, the game changes, their coaching styles change, philosophies change. And so that's the best part about it. I think that's the best part about all of the chats is that everybody's going to be different. Everyone's going to have different responses and grow and learning and all of that. So it's like you said, it's just always going to be, ever evolving, which is great.
So for my own personal interest, and so that I feel better about myself, you have reached out to people before and asked them for questions.
All the time. I
feel so bad when I do it. Somebody will text me and say, "Hey, what's the chat about?" And I'm like, "Hey, I have no idea. You have questions you want to ask?" And they'll send me.
I've done that before too. I've done that. People have reached out and I'll be like, I don't know. What do you want? Give me 4 questions and I'll put them up. I'll make sure we tag you in them and you'll get the credit for them. So what do you want?
Part of me feels so bad when I do that because I feel as if, the official of the chat, or however you want to look at the title, I feel like I'm not doing my job. But there's, between all the YouTube stuff that I've done for 9 years and all the things that I've talked about, and sometimes content creation is the hardest part of what you do. You guys obviously with Hog Football Chat, you've got an audience, you've got a following, you've done your work to reach that level. Well, now the problem becomes, how do we produce new content for the people? Right. When people first get into YouTube and Twitter and chats and all these other things, I'm sure you've got a million direct messages about it. And how do you do it? How do you go about it? And, I know me and you both responded on a tweet today where a guy said, "Hey, has anybody got to 10,000 followers without using a platform for follows and likes and all these other things?" And getting the audience is the hard part originally. But then once you have the audience, I don't think people realize how hard content creation is.
Yeah.
And coming up with things that are relevant to speak about every Monday night. And I find it hard for myself on a chat platform and a YouTube platform that is all inclusive. You're doing it on O-line. I mean, to me, it's got to be, and for those of us that understand the game, we know that the anomaly that O-line is, that, nobody gets the credit. They're never in the newspaper, but behind the scenes, we all know that's where the game is won and lost. So it's such an integral part of the game of football, but it's still one part. So, to me, it's amazing that you guys have not only been able to do it this long, not only been able to grow this audience, but the fact that the content creation is still able to come about every Monday night. To me, that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, at the end of the day, it's trying to stay relevant. I mean, that's the piece that's most important, is just trying to stay, don't, and we talked about this a little bit too, like, don't try to be anybody you're not. That's kind of what, when people ask me, like, how do you do it? How do you do it? It's about being consistent. It's about being relevant. It's about being yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. I'm not, when I get on Twitter and I tweet the things that I tweet and I do the things that I do outside of the Hog Football Chat, I'm not trying to be anybody else but myself. I'm not trying to be anybody, I'm not trying to, the things that I tweet are, I'm not tweeting for likes. I'm not tweeting for follows. I'm tweeting because it's either A, in the moment, B, I think it's funny, or C, it's something to do with football relevancy. And so it's it's being consistent, and it's just making sure that you are being, being open to the process, and just, not trying to be, again, not trying to be anybody else, but who you are.
It's funny you mentioned that. I had, at my last job I was at, I had a kid that played for me at a different school, and he was now teaching at the school that I was at. And he was into, he runs his own tutoring business, and he also runs his own kind of digital media platform. And so he came to me, and we started working together, and he worked the clinic, the Play Fast Football clinic that we did, and he took pictures and videos, and he had a lot of great ideas. And there was a time where he was editing my YouTube videos, and he put in an intro, and he put in all this work, and he did a phenomenal job. And the first video I put out, somebody sent me a message and said, "Hey, coach, can you just go back to press and record on the camera and do it?" That's what Play Fast Football is. And
right.
It was almost, it was heartbreaking for me to have to go to this kid that was a former player of mine and tell him, "Hey, look, you put in all this time and effort, and the video looks phenomenal, and the intro is phenomenal, but my fan base that I've created just wants to see me press record and talk. They don't want to see an intro. They don't want to see." So, there is something to, the transparency of just being who you are, being what you are. And I've had people come to me all the time and say, "Hey, could you break down Clemson's offense? Could you break down Iowa State's defense?" And my answer all the time is, "Hey, there's a lot of guys out there that already do that. That's not me. That's not what I do."
Right.
That's not, yeah, there's some clickbait to it. Yeah, there's a money grab maybe to it, but there's guys out there that do that already. And I don't want to do what other people are doing. I just want to do what I do.
Right. And honestly, not to, another shameless plug. I do the podcast. I do the Hog Football podcast. That was my huge fear when I first started that, because it was a quarantine COVID project, time killer. I didn't want to be the run the power guys. That was my biggest fear going into that, was like, oh, people are going to think I'm trying to copy run the power. They're going to think that I'm trying to, I'm trying to jump on their bandwagon, so to speak. And so that was my big fear. And I remember I reached out to them and was like, this is different enough from what you guys are doing, right? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. You're fine. But that was my huge fear, was I don't want to be a copycat person. I don't want to be, and that's still, you talked a little bit about the creativity piece. Like, there's so much of that goes on social media anyways, not just Twitter, but just social media in regard, and, people just blatantly copying off of other people. And I don't know, to me, that drives me more nutty than some other stuff that people do. Just be yourself instead of trying to be somebody you're not. And you'll probably find a lot more success if you just act like yourself than trying to act like anyone else.
Well, the hardest part, I think, is once you enter the realm of content creation, social media, you're trying to build an audience and you're trying to grow an audience. And I think you can agree that we're in a very limited setting, although it's a huge setting in the United States. If you just talk about football, if you just talk about O-line, there's only so big your audience is going to get, because, if you want to truly grow your audience, you've got to go out and do some other things. And I was never really one that wanted to do that. I never wanted to bring all these foreign things into my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel was just me on a whiteboard talking football. Yes, I realize that me on a whiteboard is going to limit my audience. And we're now, and I'm sure, Hog Football Chat, you deal with the same thing, where you're now, you're not at capacity, but you're close to capacity, probably, because at some point, how many other people in the world are going to be interested in offensive line play?
Right.
But I never wanted to be somebody who went out and did these other things to draw YouTube followers. You know what I mean? Like, this is my platform. This is what I do. It's been good enough to me to get me here. Yes, I want to continue to grow Play Fast Football and Coach Mac, in a business entity, but I don't want to do it in a fashion to where I'm doing what everybody else does.
Right. No, I agree 100%. I mean, it's still trying to just maintain your own your own, uniqueness. And it's that can sometimes be harder than just
Oh,
going out there and doing what everyone else does and being like everybody else. So
well, with that being
I
said,
get
though,
that.
I feel bad for all these guys now, but I'm kind of glad I went the route I did, because now I see everybody getting their channels banned for all the all 22,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And I think it's complete, I think it's a complete farce, of whatever it may have to do with publication rights and copyright and other stuff. But, these guys they're doing nothing but using a film that's out there and putting stuff
Right.
out that people want to see, so, but I feel bad for those guys when they post up and say, hey, my channel's been pulled down and
Right.
content's been pulled. And, but at the same time, I go back and I think, I kind of count my lucky stars that I did things the way I did them, and I never changed to do it another way, because that would have been the way to get more people and to get more followers, is to go out and do a video and say, hey, look what Clemson's doing, look what Alabama's doing.
Right. Yeah, because that's
You know?
you get the buzzwords, and you get to do all that kind of stuff, and you get the people, the flashy things, and they get involved, and then again you're explaining the same thing that 13 other people have explained the last week. So
you're just putting a different twist on it.
Exactly.
Now let's get into what's going to be for me the funnest part of the conversation. A couple questions that I need answered.
Okay.
So let's just let's take a look at, first off, how do you feel about being possibly labeled as a Twitter coach or an internet coach?
I love it. I mean, I think you and I have talked enough about it today. The Twitter internet coaching world is so special. I can't count the relationships I've built. I can't count the friendships I've made. I can't count I can't begin to label the amount of knowledge that I've learned from quote unquote Twitter/internet coaches. I mean, you and I wouldn't be talking right now if we weren't Twitter coaches.
100%.
So it is, in my opinion, and I know plenty of coaches who hate Twitter, can't stand it, don't want to get on it, don't want to use it, but it is such a great tool for any coach of any sport. That honestly, when the only other tool I think that is just as important is probably your other platform, YouTube. So when coaches are, I mean, I still all the time coaches ask me about certain things, hey, what do you do on this, or how did you learn about this? My two answers are always check Twitter and check YouTube, because you can find anything you need. And so to be labeled a Twitter coach and an internet coach, in my opinion, is great. Thank you. Thanks for the compliment, guy. Like I love the profession, and I love the platform we have. And if not for Twitter, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
Yeah, honestly. 100%. Great answer. Where did the love of GIFs on the Hog Football chat come from?
I don't know. You had mentioned that earlier in a text, and so I started to think about it, and I can't remember, because it was somebody did something on a chat, and I remember I didn't know what the hell it was. I was like, how do you do this? How do you post these things? What is this? And so it started on the chat. I mean, obviously it didn't start on the chat. People were doing it before that, but I started seeing them on the chat, and people started to post them, and I just thought they were always funny. And it like blew up, and I don't know how it just became, that was the way people started to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to me, if you were to ask me about the Hog Football chat and the GIF world, I would think it started with introductions. I would think it started with, and I think you threw it out there one time a couple years ago. I think you threw it out there and said, hey, don't forget to introduce yourself, and don't be afraid to use a GIF or the best GIF or whatever because it just adds some flavor to the hey, Tony Shiffman, Illinois O-line coach,
right. And I don't, and again, I wish I could go back in time and look and see how it started. But it's one of those things that sort of took off, and I love, I mean, I gave away my secret about how I plug everything in on TweetDeck, and it takes me 10 minutes. 8 of those minutes are probably trying to find the perfect GIFs to use for everything. So it's just something that's so unique for our experience. And whoever started it is a good person, but it's just it's such a fun thing.
Somebody out there is a genius for
Yeah.
doing it however they figured it out, GIFs
Yeah.
and memes and all those other things. But to me, that'll be the on top of the platform itself, the one thing that'll stand out for me with the Hog Football chat will always be my I don't want to use the word jealousy, so to speak, but I was always trying to get people on the Florida high school football chat to introduce themselves using GIFs.
Yeah.
And I always introduce myself with a different GIF, usually a wrestling GIF probably, but I always, I tried to bring that into my platform because it was so interesting and so unique and outside of just the standard, hey guys, introduce yourself. And, it was just a way that it took a life of its own. And guys, I almost felt like, to be honest with you, not to take away anything from the chat itself, I almost felt like guys prepped all their time into their introduction and their GIF to get into the chat than they did the actual answers to the chat questions.
Oh, there's plenty of guys that will just introduce themselves and not answer any questions. But they get but again, it's you would talk about.
Hate to say that I'm that guy, but I've done it on Hog Football chat about 15 different times. I've introduced myself just to use a GIF, and then I've gone on my way into whatever else was going on.
It's that creativity, uniqueness that we talked about. It's everyone gets to be their own person, and I love it.
Yeah. So, all right, this will be the last part, Coach Shiffman. This has been an honor. You've been a great first guest. I am was a hockey fan growing up. I grew up on Long Island in the early 80s. I was fortunate enough to be around the New York Islanders trying to win 5 straight Stanley Cups. And my dad worked for a printing company, and with the newspaper, he printed some things that were called the Drive for 5. Okay. So this is going to be our Drive for 5. We're going to do it in kind of a tempo setting if we can.
Gotcha.
Please forgive me, everybody out there, if I have to check my notes right now to make sure I have the right 5 questions. But we are going to do a Drive for 5 questions you know nothing about, 5 answers that you give off the top of your head. And because I'm a tempo guy, I would appreciate it if you could answer these in a no huddle tempo fashion.
I got you.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Favorite football player?
Olin Kreutz.
All right. Favorite football coach?
Oh God. Art Kehoe.
Good one. Favorite movie?
There's too many. Again.
Delay a game.
Huh?
Delay a game.
You can give me delay a game. My friends and I grew up watching so many movies. Favorite movie, Blues Brothers.
Good one.
Yeah.
Favorite TV show?
The Office.
Not bad. Favorite band?
AC/DC.
All right, not bad. The first ever Mac Talk Drive for 5, Coach Shiffman. I think we did it. We used one timeout and got.
I had one delay. I had one timeout. I had to, yeah.
But as the O-line coach, I give him a special cause for a timeout or a delay game if we need one. Didn't like the front. Didn't like the presentation.
Yeah.
So I'll burn a timeout or waste 5 yards or kill 5 yards for you, Coach Shiffman. But again, I appreciate you being the first one to do this, our first episode of the Mac Talk, and hopefully we continue it on, and hopefully we give the Patreon viewers something different than the YouTube experience, something different than everything I've done before. So I appreciate your time. I know this is your second Zoom of the day. You are a celebrity out there amongst our circle, but I will probably label this as the Twitter coach, Coach Shiffman.
Thank you.
Since you just changed your bio,
I did.
I will label this as a conversation with the Twitter coach, Coach Shiffman. But I appreciate your time, and you have a great night, sir, and a good week, and good luck on becoming a father.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. This was a blast. If you ever need somebody else to can't find somebody, give me a call. I'd love to do it again.
If I call you for episode 2, I've reached a snag.
That's all right. We'll just make a whole series of just you and I talking.
Yeah, we'll figure out other things to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, my man. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.